All right, thank you so much. It's actually really a great pleasure to meet you guys over Microsoft Teams. Thanks, Vignesh, for your introduction. So can the class hear me all right? And also,
Uh,
if they have questions, how would I be able to? Because right now I cannot see on my screen, I guess. But I guess that's okay for me to be
okay.
presenting that way.
Okay.
Yes,
Can you?
yes.
Uh, yeah. Can you speak now?
Yeah, I'm speaking. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So, I guess I'm hearing my feedback that's okay. So when the class has a question, I'm assuming this is also kind of like an offline class, right?
Yeah.
Or
So
is it
there are live students in
okay?
with me in the class, and
Okay.
there are probably people who are joining the call as well.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so if you guys have any questions, I guess you can be speaking up, and I assume I'd be able to hear them over Teams. If not, if Vignesh, if you could relay the
Sure.
question to me, that would be
Yeah.
great.
I'll do
And
that.
also, for some reason, I cannot see the camera images of you, so please feel free to interrupt me anytime if you have anything, because right now all I'm seeing is my slides, which is completely okay with me when I'm presenting. So just a heads up, okay?
Sure.
Yeah, all right. Yes, so back to my talk. Thank you everyone for inviting me. I'm here in Seoul, Korea. It's actually a bit early in the morning, three a little past three, but I'm always happy about talking about my research. So very happy to see you guys. So my talk is titled Unveiling the Benefits and Sensing. Benefits, actually, I'm going to be talking a little bit, if I have time, also about risks, benefits, and risks of sensing in cyber physical security. Just to give you a quick glance of, I guess, intro of myself. I'm currently here in Yonsei University, which is one of the, I guess, the top schools in Korea in the E department. I used to teach also at the CS department in NUS, National University of Singapore. And I work on the intersection, very interestingly, in this very unique research area that is in the intersection of mobile computing, sensing systems, and security. And most importantly, my students, of course. And let's move on to today's talk. So computing has been dominant in the cyber domain. Things like Facebook, Gmail, or Bank of America is really, have been really been dominant online, right? So that's what we enjoy and have enjoyed in the past. But computing is, actually transforming, and as a lot of you may already be witnessing, which is going from the purely from the cyber domain to cyber physical domain, right? With the advent of, things like smartphones that we have every day and smart homes, and even, as moving on to, self-driving cars, right? So this is possible because of sensors and actuators that are being equipped in these devices that actually more and more make these devices, sort of act like us humans in interacting, sensing and perceiving the physical world, right? And so with that, I have one main question for you today, which is, how about security? Is the security, adequate and sufficient enough to cope with these challenges, right? This transformation. And my answer to that, of course, is that it is not, because in the physical world, the data rely much more on their physical relationships among the involved parties rather than their digital identities alone. So let me try to give you an idea of what I mean by that. So let's say in the world of near future, we have this V2V system that are deployed in these cars. Let's assume, right? So we have these two cars, car M and car A, driving on the road, where car M is actually driving in front of car A. But for this purpose, let's assume that car M is actually malicious and wants to fool car A into believing that car M is actually behind car A. So car M sends this message, right, which is obviously fake, and says, "Hey car A, I'm behind you," right? Now car A, our poor little car A here, has no other way to verify this message, right? And so has no option but to just believe this message, right? So one might think that I guess for the students in the class, I don't know if you guys have had the chance to study digital certificates, but if I assume this is advances in computing, so maybe some of you might have learned about security, and obviously things that we often use in computer security is digital certificates, right? So one might think, why not just and digital signatures and things like that. So why not just a pen or send the information, the GPS information, and sign that message, right? But unfortunately, when you sign this message to and send it to A, the digital signature simply verifies the identity of the sender, right? But it doesn't you know verify the locality information, and even making the problem worse, exacerbating the problem, GPS information is also easily spoofed, right? It's vulnerable to spoofing attacks, and at best, it's very low in accuracy, right? In especially in urban areas. So this sort of scenario really um, brings about the following challenge, where we actually need to verify and potentially bind the digital identities along with their physical relationships and context. And so the main question of the rest of my talk is, how do we actually, enable these IoT devices and cyber physical systems to reason and learn about their physical relationships and context, right? So, in efforts to answer that question, my students and I have started looking into where we live in, right, which is the physical world, right? So, and we or also sort of try to refer to this as contextual cues from the environment, or signals of opportunity, right? Which is our like speakers emitting sound, like just like how you guys are listening to my voice right now, or your dryer humming, or your cars driving over potholes, and light bulbs emitting light, all of which can actually be captured by the sensors that are equipped in these IoT devices, and ultimately to be used to verify their physical relationships. And as a teaser to the rest of my talk, it's actually very interesting that some of these signals are actually often treated as noise, right? So traditional notion of noise can actually be used as very useful signal, right? And so with that, we try to, foresee what are some potential ways to utilize these contextual cues for studying ways to, defend against certain security attacks, so security benefits, and also try to see if we can actually find newer or more novel security risks if we put on the attacker's hat, right? So, so in my research, we tried to look into a bunch of these areas. I don't have time to go over all of these things, but today I'd like to go over a couple of interesting research projects that my group has looked into, just on a high level, right? And if you guys are more interested, I'd be happy to talk to you more about it at some other point. I'd be happy to share my email with you later as well. Okay. So let's first look into the first pillar of my research, which is the security benefits from context, right? So I'm gonna skip this slide a bit for now. And actually in my security benefits, we have two sub-pillars, which is secure authentication. I guess I could go back to that slide for now. So in the notion of secure authentication, we've been looking into how do we actually find ways, find contextual information to help in authenticating these different you know IoT or CPS settings, right? So things like drone authentication, for instance, for drone delivering. We all know about Amazon's new drone delivery system that they're trying to launch, right? Or I don't know if you guys have seen this bottom right image GIF where these trucks are sort of cruising on the highway. So it turns out that these trucks are actually not just three trucks, but they are actually semi-autonomous trucking, or it's also called truck platooning. And in these mobility cases, what we wanted to do was to utilize these contextual information, such as in the first case of the drone, we wanted to see if the drone is actually the drone that we're trying to maybe when the sender wants to send some package to a third party, for instance, we want to see if the drone that is actually being used to pick up the product is actually say the courier drone like FedEx or DHL instead of a malicious attacker's drone. So we wanted to see if we can actually utilize the unique sound that is unique to certain instance of the drone. When the drone flies, it makes this wee sound, right? So even though they all sound similar, we were able to see that different instances of the drone, even within the same make and model, the sound was minutely different. So we want to see if we can utilize that. Similarly, for the trucking scenario, we wanted to see if the trucks can actually verify that the trucks that they're going to admit to the platoon is actually traveling on the same lane for various reasons, which I'm not going to get into right now. But so what we wanted to see was, can we actually utilize the road context, in other words, the bumpiness of the road, to verify if certain trucks are actually following the preceding trucks on the same lane as opposed to the attacker's truck that is on the adjacent lane. But anyways, today I don't want to get into this set of work because of the interest of time, but just wanted to give you a quick glimpse of this, right? So let's focus rather more on this other sub-pillar within my security benefits, which is physics-guided attack detection, right? By the way, do you guys have any questions so far? I guess let me switch to the Teams view. I guess the chat. Okay, if you have any questions, please, you can interrupt me or
Yeah,
yes.
I will interrupt you if I
Yes.
see questions.
Yes, sure. Excuse me. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the main part of the talk, which is physics-guided attack detection, right? So I'm going to shift gears a bit and talk about booze, liquor, right? So why am I suddenly talking about liquor? So it turns out that there's a surge of fake or counterfeit liquid food products that are available in the market today. And sorry, this is in Korean, but what it says is that there are 6 people who unfortunately passed away in Malaysia because they've been drinking, they drank fake alcohol, right? But it's not just fake liquor, but it's also fake olive oil, it's fake honey. All of these things we categorize as liquid food products, obviously, right? So what is this counterfeit, liquid food products? So let me give you an idea, right? So it turns out, never really realized, but until I worked on this project, that olive oil could actually be super expensive. Like, on the order of like $700-800, right? But when you have this original olive oil, what the attacker could do is actually, you know, mix certain portion of the liquid content with counterfeit substitutes. And the substitutes could be cheaper substances like peanut oil or soybean oil or corn oil, which are only in the order of like $4, for example. And if you mix this, but unfortunately, what the attacker could have been doing is to seal this bottle with to factory standards, so that for an average user, it's actually very difficult to really verify if this is the authentic oil as opposed to the counterfeit, right? So the main question of this project was, can we detect adulteration without opening the bottles? But another challenge was this utilizing only commodity devices, because with the state-of-the-art solution to verify the authenticity of these liquid products, food products, is to simply open the bottle. In other words, break the seal, open the bottle, extract the sample, send it to the lab, utilize a very expensive machine to verify the physical properties of these liquids, right? In order to be able to verify the authenticity of the product. And obviously, John Doe on the street would not be able to, do that, right? Because let's say you want to purchase something in your supermarket, for example, or maybe it's a like a secondhand transaction. How would you be able to do that, as an average person, right? So I guess the main questions that we wanted to verify was, can an average user utilize their smartphone, which they bring every day, and without opening the bottle? So let's say in this case, the user would be in the supermarket and would want to verify the product prior to purchasing, right? So here's a user, and the user flips out their phone and utilizes our app to take some some slow motion video of the liquid bottle, right, without opening the bottle, of course, and would be able to calculate some notion of liquid properties, which I'll get into in a minute, and try to see if that verifies with the information that is uploaded to the manufacturer's cloud prior to selling this product. And if the two information match, then the user has certain guarantee that this product is actually authentic. Now, does that remind you of something? Well, it's very similar to a software hash checksum verification, right? Hence, we named our project Liquid Hash. Okay. Now, so as I mentioned, there are certain liquid properties like density, viscosity, and surface tension, which I'm not going to get into the details now. But all of these things are actually very important properties to verify the liquid authenticity. And as I said, the state of the art is these expensive machines in the lab, right, would be able to calculate these things. But the challenge is we wanted to utilize our phones, right? But unfortunately, as I said, when you don't open the bottle and you're trying to take these slow motion video of the liquid bottle, it's actually you don't have enough sufficient information to extract these liquid properties, right? So what do we do, right? And it turns out that one day when my students and I have been trying to explore this thing, what caught our eyes was these bubbles, right? So you can see it when I flip this bottle, right? I don't know if you can see through my webcam, but what forms are the bubbles? And as you can see, vodka, olive oil, and honey, each of them have these bubbles. And what caught our eyes was this differences in their size, shape, and speed that form with these bubbles, right? And we call that bubble characteristics. And we found that these liquid properties, even though we cannot directly compute the liquid properties from the slow motion video captured by your smartphone, could actually capture the bubble characteristics. And these characteristics would help us to infer the liquid authenticity, even though we can't compute the liquid properties directly, right? So that's the core idea of liquid hash. So here we have the user flipping the bottle, and what would form is these set of bubbles, right, that arises. And without opening the bottle, we can actually, capture that through our smartphone camera, and utilizing computer vision techniques, we'd be able to extract these bubble feature or bubble characteristics features, and be able to verify the authenticity of the product, right? So that's the high-level idea of liquid hash. If I mention it to this point, it sounds all reasonable and relatively, straightforward, right? But it turns out that there are multiple very difficult challenges, such as there's so many, multiple sources of noise, right? Because you are asking the user to flip, right, the bottle. And each test, each flip is actually really different. And so the noise due to rotation motion is non-negligible. And also camera placement and angle, distance and angle also varies minutely the way that we capture the bubble. And also the liquid movement inside the bottle actually causes different bubble shapes, and we called some of these nice looking bubbles regular bubble shapes, and some of the irregular ones we could also see. And also we see there are certain erratic bubble trajectories, especially in the beginning and towards the later frames. So we wanted to really crop out the middle section of the frames, right? And so I guess the PowerPoint is lost in translation. But what we wanted to also mention is that second important challenge was that the difference of the bubble characteristics is actually not so much between authentic 100% olive oil versus say the counterfeit 70% olive oil plus 30% sunflower. So the difference between the bubble characteristics is very minute, and so we actually needed to perform very fine-grained feature extraction to be able to segregate the two, right? So how do we solve these two challenges? Essentially, the two challenges that I just mentioned. And so we utilize a series of pre-processing and feature extraction pipeline, which I'm not going to get into right now. Let me skip these slides. But essentially, as I said, we varied or we performed various processing and ML. We implemented ML pipelines to be able to verify the liquid authenticity, right? And we tested this across multiple liquid food products along with their counterfeit or cheaper substances to achieve relatively high accuracy of up to 95%. But I'd like to spend the rest of my time on other projects. So let me move on real quick. And we've been actually a lot of local media have been covering our topics. We've received our Best Poster Award at Mobisys. So let me actually move on to my next line of work, which is, if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me again, okay? All right. So the next line of work is also within this physics-guided attack detection, and this is actually trying to see if we can actually detect hidden spy cameras in public restrooms. Vignesh, how many minutes do I have left right now? Do you know?
20 minutes.
Okay, all right, so I can actually cover this. All right, so this project is quite interesting because hidden spy cameras, I don't know, I guess it's also quite prevalent in the US. I don't know how prevalent it is in South Carolina, but here in Korea, as well as many different countries in Asia, this hidden spy camera is a huge societal concern, right? For some reason, the attackers actually, hide these little cameras in public restrooms or hotel rooms, and it's becoming a huge problem, right? And it's reported that it's not just here in Korea, but also in China and India, and I guess also parts of the US as well, right? So this is one of local news actually showing a local police officer regularly patrolling these restrooms with these detector devices that she carries right now, which is nothing but just this detector device with the red LEDs being emitted on the other side of the camera, and the hope is to capture these reflections. Let me show you an example. So here's an electrical socket, right? And that circle, that green circle, shows where the hidden camera is. So you just need to trust me here. There is a hidden camera here. Now, when the officer sees through these through the detector device, what she would see is this sort of red sort of ish image, but you can actually see that bright reflection. So you can actually manually tell that there is the hidden spy camera. Unfortunately, however, there are so many false positives, right? Because there's so many of these reflections. So you're expected, as a user of this detector, you're expected to actually manually try to see where the reflection is in hopes to detect these hidden cameras, right? Exacerbating the problem, of course, um, how many of you actually carry this sort of device? Actually, nobody really carries this device, right? So, as an average user, this sort of thing is actually also, not a plausible solution, right? And this actually fortifies this problem because this is a documentary by one of the main news channels in Korea, and they've actually invited the police officers and they've actually it's sort of like a mission for the police officers to demonstrate the gravity of the situation. And so the producers of the documentary actually hid like say 5 to 10 hidden cameras in this public restroom, and the police officers were asked to see if they could find these hidden cameras, and they gave them like 30 minutes, but they couldn't find all of the hidden cameras, right? So this is a serious problem. So what we wanted to do was, again, to empower the average users to simply flip out their phone and scan the environment, right? And the main, I guess, goal was to see if the user could actually easily detect and also localize where the hidden camera is. And this is somewhat possible, right, through this work, and I'll tell you why, right? So actually, what these newer smartphones actually have is this lidar sensor, which is nothing but a laser time of flight sensor. What it is it's equipped in these smartphones to capture the distance of the object to your smartphone, and these are used in various augmented reality apps like your IKEA app to measure the distances within your room, for instance, right? And these sensors, of course, are not equipped for detecting hidden cameras. But what we found out was that actually, because these laser time of flight sensors, how they measure these distances is actually computing the time of the laser beam, being transmitted until it's reflected from the object and it receives back to the sensor, and to be able to compute the distance, right? So what we thought was actually we could actually utilize this laser reflection, so that if you transmit the laser beam to an object without the hidden camera, what would happen is the reflection would cause what is called the diffuse reflection, which is really a weak reflection, right? But if you transmit the laser beam to the object with the hidden camera, specifically to the lens, right? What this would cause is a retro reflection, which is a really strong reflection that reflects back. This is very synonymous to the cat eye effect, right? When you take a picture of the cat, right, and your cat's eyes are blinking, right, or shining very strongly, right? So this is what we actually utilized. I'm gonna go over the high level because of the interest of time. So this is actually a screen capture of our demo video. You can actually check out the demo video on my website. So if you run our app and it's sort of an augmented reality app where you would actually click the object of interest, all right, object that you feel or you suspect that may potentially carry the hidden camera. And then the app would ask you to scan the object a bit for a few seconds. And the app would tell you, oh, there's the hidden camera, right? And that's what the app shows. And if you actually sort of sort of study the bottle, observe the bottle a bit more carefully, you can actually see that the water bottle actually contains this hidden camera, right? So upon publishing this work, our project was also featured in multiple news articles, including Forbes. And okay, skip this a little bit. So if you're interested, I also invite you to read our paper. Okay. Let me actually switch gears a bit. I'm going to skip a little bit due to the interest of time. And I'm going to switch gears a little bit to the risks side of things, specifically risks of sensing or risks from contextual cues. Okay. So in this sort of line of work, right, our job is to see, to put on the attacker's hat and try to foresee potential attacks that potentially would occur in the future, in hopes to, of course, prepare for that sort of scenario, right? So let me give you a few a quick glimpse of these projects, right? The first line of work is this physical key inference. So I'm sure you guys all use physical keys, right? So in this work, what we wanted to find out was whether it is possible for an attacker in the vicinity to be utilizing his or her smartphone microphone, right, to see if you can actually capture the sound of the victim's physical key being inserted to the door lock, right, as the attacker is passing by the victim, and to be able to utilize that sound signal to actually reconstruct the victim's key, right? So, as the victim inserts his or her key into the door lock to unlock his door or her door, it makes this droop sound, right? Droop, right? And actually, that sound is relatively quite large. So we wanted to see if the attacker would be able to capture that and reconstruct the key, right? And so how do you do that, right? First of all, it's actually a pity because when I actually mentioned this and when I'm actually presenting this offline, I see people's faces really turning red, like, or they're really surprised, right? And I love it when I see those reactions. So what's a how does your key actually work, right? You actually need to understand the high level idea of this. So your key actually has this notion of cut depths, which are the sort of the secret of the key, right? In this case, that is 795,393. That's almost like your pin code, right? And so when you have the 7, it's cut by the 7, depth of 7, and then depth of 9, depth of 5, and so on and so forth, right? So the attacker's goal, of course, is to be able to infer this depth by this droop sound. And it turns out that it is possible. I'm not going to go into the details. And surprisingly, through our comprehensive evaluation, what we found out was that we are able to reduce the key space all the way from 60,000 possible keys to at best to just 2 keys, right? So what this means is that the attacker could go home with that recording and run our app, right? And would be able to 3D print just 2 keys, and the next day the attacker could go to the victim's door and one of the 2 keys would open, right? That's pretty crazy, right? Um, so here's how it sounds like actually. Actually, I don't know if the sound was. Let me play that again. Sorry. I guess actually I can't hear it. So maybe if you can't hear it, it's just sound of your key being inserted. Okay. All right. So um, so this is our initial phase where actually my student working on this, she's now sort of an expert in lockpicking because we've purchased multiple lockpicking tools to understand this mechanics of keys. And initially we wanted to test across different microphones, but also with different sensors like your vibration sensor like your geophone and things like that, right? And another challenge, actually quite a significant challenge, especially in the beginning of the project, was similar to the bottle flipping case. In this case, it was extremely difficult to have a consistent speed of insertion, right? Even if I wanted to make this insertion speed very consistent, it was very difficult. And of course, now in this case, we can't ask the victim to insert their key consistently, right? So that was a huge challenge. But initially, we wanted to remove that challenge, right? Because we wanted to solve the problem one step at a time. So we utilized this robot arm to make that consistent sort of insertion. And so there you can see, right? But of course, later we had to remove that assumption, and that became a whole new problem. And we actually built our own door, and we also utilized different microphones, right? So again, once this work was published, different media, including communications of the ACM and Forbes and so on and so forth, were covering our project. If you're interested, I invite you to read our paper and also the articles. Okay. Also, I guess it's also on YouTube as well, so you could actually check that out as well. Okay. I guess I could talk about this as my last project for today, which is also in line of I guess acoustics-based attacks, is eavesdropping via LiDAR sensor. So specifically, I'm sure a lot of you actually use robot vacuum cleaners, right? So it turns out that these robot vacuum cleaners, for privacy reasons, they do not equip microphones, right? Because why would you need a microphone in your robot vacuum cleaners? So you might think that it is actually safe from eavesdropping your speech, right? Suppose that these robot vacuum cleaners, which are all now networked through your Wi-Fi, if they could, listen to your conversation, your privacy sensitive conversation in your living room, for example, they could actually, sort of send that out to the attacker, remote attacker, right? So that's exactly what we did without using the microphone. So I don't know if you guys have seen these robot vacuum cleaners, but on top of the robot vacuum cleaner, there's this little spinning sensor, which is actually a LiDAR sensor. It's the same sensor as that laser time of flight sensor that is equipped in your smartphones, right? But this one is spinning. It's spinning for a reason. It's spinning so that it could actually map out the environment for mapping purposes so that it knows where to clean, right? But it turns out that we were able to actually find new vulnerability of the sensor, specifically to repurpose this LiDAR sensor to a microphone, right? And so here's an attack model, right? Here's the scenario. So let's assume that just like us, we're connected through the victim is engaged in this Zoom meeting, for instance, right? And so the victim and the victim's colleague, remote colleague, actually engages in this privacy sensitive conversation. Let's say they're speaking their social security number 194706839, and which is actually being emitted by the victim's computer speakers, right? The speaker and the subwoofer. Now, as these messages or as these speeches being emitted through the speaker, what also vibrates is the nearby objects like your trash can or your plastic bag or whatever, right? What have you. And as these we call the target objects, as these target objects like your trash can is minutely vibrating, if the laser beam actually hits on that object, it can reflect back to the LiDAR sensor, also carrying this minute speech signal. And if the remote attacker can process this LiDAR signal very carefully, you can actually extract quite a large, relatively large set of information to be able to get some information about the speech, right? And so that's sort of the high level idea of this attack, right? So if you see the figure on the right, you can actually see our experiment setup where we have these computer speakers and a target object, right? And the robot vacuum cleaner. And so on the bottom left here is the actual raw LiDAR signal, the blue signals. When we play a chirp signal is like do 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 do, that sort of signal is chirp signal. So each time we have the chirp, you can actually see this sort of cluster of this raw signal being shown, right? Now, when my students and I first saw this, when we were working on this project, we were so happy, right? Because that's evidence of how these LiDAR sensors are actually capturing speech, right? And also, this was quite interesting because when we were running this experiment, it was in the midst of the U.S. presidential election, and we thought it would be quite interesting to also infer someone's political orientation, because that's also quite privacy sensitive. And so we thought, if we can tell if one is watching CNN versus Fox News, you could actually tell their privacy or their political orientation. And so this is how the LiDAR sensor looks like when you actually listen to the news intro song, right? So that's how it sounds like, right? Right. So essentially, so we tested across 20 different news channels, and we were able to capture quite reliably which channel the victim is watching, right? And you could sort of think of it where the TV, right, in the victim's living room would be emitting this sound, and the robot vacuum cleaner, of course, being also located in the same room, could actually perceive this sound, right? So again, it was also introduced in different news articles. Um, and yeah, so with that, I hope I was able to give you some glimpse of, I guess let me move on to my next slide. I've of other slides as well, but I guess I hope that I was able to give you some glimpse of the research that is being conducted in this domain of IoT and CPS security, right? So with that, I'd like to I guess open it up for more questions.
All right. Any questions from audience? Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So in the first the first piece of research work that Dr. Han introduced is about characterize the liquid, right? So I just wonder because I have some impression that some people that can actually differentiate whether that let's say olive oil is authentic by just looking at the some characteristics. Maybe they also look at the bubbles. I just want to know with some, for example, some training, can one of your students also characterize the?
Okay, got it. So if I heard the question correctly, I guess what I heard was whether it would be possible for a trained user to be able to differentiate the counterfeit versus the authentic with their bare eyes. Is that the question?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So that's actually a really good question. In fact, we were curious as well of the same, I guess, question. So we actually invited quite a large number of participants to verify uh, the difference. And so we call that our baseline. And it turned out that the baseline was completely, erratic because, it's actually really interesting. It's actually really difficult to verify the two. So yeah, I guess with the experiment, we were quite certain that this is something that one cannot verify with their bare eyes. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
I guess my question is, when you're looking at these physical key inference or the eavesdropping with the robot vacuum, are these well-known attacks within the attack space, or are these attacks that you're envisioning down the road that could arise? I mean, what's the origination of these forms of attack models? I'm just curious, not having the background in your space.
Sure. No, that's also a very nice question. No, these questions, sorry, these attacks have never been, to the best of our knowledge, never been really introduced, and so I guess that's the excitement that we have, because like physical key inference. I mean, people have been looking into attacking like digital door locks, for example, but nothing with this sort of physical, key inference. We actually often sort of give the nickname for these attacks, which we call physical hacking. We think that we're, really sort of stumbling into this nice attack space that we call physical hacking, essentially capturing physical sort of phenomena, right, to be able to sort of capture new information. Specifically, in this case, it turns out to be useful information for the attacker, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
A question regarding the computer vision. So we discussed about the speed of the bubble and the characteristic of the bubble. How did you manage to use these two information in order to detect the authenticity of the liquid?
So if I heard the question correctly, so you're asking about the vision technique to track the bubbles. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so we use a bunch of different processing techniques, different segmentation techniques and bubble tracking. I guess one thing that I could, I mean, if you're interested, of course, I'd invite you to read our paper. But one very interesting technique that we utilize, I remember, which was very synonymous to re-identification purpose in the state-of-the-art vision technique, because sometimes the bubble, we're supposed to track the bubble arising from bottom to the top, right? But sometimes it would be lost in certain frames and then reappear. So we would, but they're the same sort of bubbles, right? So we need to actually track these things, and it's very similar to re-identification problem. But again, that's just one part of the problem. There were multiple sort of series of these pipelines. So I invite you to read our paper for more detail.
Guessing the question, it would be like, did you consider the speed of the bubble, shape of the bubble, the boundaries of the bubble? What was it that the most?
Okay. Right. So we looked at three things. We looked at the bubble size, speed, and shape, size, and speed. Terminal velocity, and the size and the shape.
Yes.
Yeah, I have maybe a not fully germane question to what you're doing, but you indeed there is very expensive olive oil, but most olive oil is much cheaper. Okay, so you can get really good olive oil for about $10 a liter in U.S. supermarkets. So someone who's really concerned about the quality of the oil and wants to spend hundreds of dollars on the bottle may be able to afford a laboratory test or something, like that. So I wonder whether your example is a little bit off, that whether there may be some.
I got your question. Unfortunately, even as much as I want to agree with you, unfortunately, we've actually seen people dying from these sort of attacks. So it's actually quite unfortunate, actually, if you read these news articles. I invite you to go and Google search these things. People dying from drinking these fake liquor and things like that. It's not really much about being able to afford the lab test or anything. It's also to do with usability and also accessibility to these machines. Because even if you have the money, you need to make this purchase decision now. Where are you going to, how are you going to send it to the lab, right? So this is it's just a huge societal problem, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I have a question, just curious. So in the key identification of digital signatures for keys, I was just curious, is there for keys, the length of the number code, is that commonly, is there a standardized length or?
Yes, actually, all of the keys that are frequently used, a lot of you probably have these keys. You're probably using a Schley key, or there are actually two brands that are dominant in the market. It's either Schley or forget the other brand. It's been a while, but it's one of the two. And of course, they have different models, right? But there are these common sort of specifications that are all public. Actually, if you go to their website, everything is public, and it's usually these keys are actually called pin tumbler locks. Keys that are compatible with the pin tumbler locks is what we usually use, right? And so these are usually 6-digit, sometimes 5, but 6 sort of pins. That's actually not really digits, but digits synonymous to